Hello, everybody. You're watching this video because you are interested in learning about the exciting world of SPSS, or the Statistical Package for the Social Sciences. So let's start from the very beginning by opening up our data. So I'm going to be playing around with the cosmetic surgery dataset. And SPSS files will be denoted with a .sav. So I would open it up just like I would any file, and then I download it. And in this case, I save it to my desktop. I would recommend uh, getting into the habit of saving it to a thumb drive or some kind of external device so that you can uh, take it with you and work on your project on different computers. If I save it to the desktop, then I can only work on it from this machine. So once I have the file where I want it, I open it. Just click open. And what should appear eventually is your data set. So this should look similar or familiar to all of you to an Excel file. We have a bunch of columns and we have a bunch of rows. If you look at the bottom left, you can see that there are two tabs. One is highlighted right now that says Data View. When Data View is highlighted, we're looking at our data set. So this is a study that was conducted on a group of participants. This is from a psychology researcher, and they were interested in kind of understanding the impact that um, plastic surgery has on patient quality of life. And so they enrolled a group of participants. So let's first check just what we're dealing with here. How many people are in this study? So each row is a different person. Each person gets a unique identifier, so you don't have to use their names. They can be anonymous. And then each row contains their information. So let's scroll down to the bottom, and we can see we have 276 rows, so 276 people in our study. So for each person, we've gathered some information in the form of variables. So let's kind of quickly go through this. The first column, just the unique identifier. And the second and third column, we have a quality of life survey value. So patients were given uh, a questionnaire designed to assess their overall kind of satisfaction or quality of life. Um, they take the survey once at the beginning, and so that's the baseline. And then they take the survey again after they've had the surgery. And you'll notice a little ruler next to each of these variables. When you see that, it denotes a continuous variable. So we know that there are two basic types of variables, continuous and categorical. Continuous values show a scale or a range of values. In this case, it's a survey score, so they will score from low to high. This person scored a 71 after the surgery and a 73 before. Next variable says surgery. So this is some information on the type of surgery. You can see there's not a little ruler. There's a kind of little cluster. This denotes a categorical variable. So you can kind of think of it as like, unique little groups, little categories in the cluster. And so my categories are denoted as numbers. And that's ideally what I want to see is a data set full of just numbers, no words. The numbers represent the categories or groups, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. The next variable is another categorical, giving information on the type of clinic. I now have another continuous variable. That's the person's age. So person number 1 is 31 years old. The next is another continuous variable. This is the BDI, or Beck Depression Inventory. It's a survey that's used to diagnose depression. We also collected information on the reason for the surgery, and then the biological sex of the participant, because we want to test the hypothesis that there may be differences in um, quality of life change pre and post surgery. So in the original data set, I believe this is labeled as gender. So that was mislabeled. Gender and sex are treated separately in research. Sex refers to the biological sex of the participant. So let's start working with our variables, and I'll show you how I changed that. So this, again, is your data view. This is where you're going to be when you're analyzing your data, when you're just want to review what your data set looks like. I also have the power to go in and edit and refine or make changes to any of these variables. And to do so, I go down to the left corner and click Variable View. And now I have a different setup. Instead of all the participants and their variables, this is just a list of each of the variables in the study. And so you can see that they go in order of the ones that you saw in the data view. So to begin, real easy, you can change the name. So this was gender before. I changed it to sex. Note on naming your variables, keep it simple, short, no spaces. That's why you see an underscore with some of these. Typically no numbers or special characters, just keep it real simple. These are all numbers that we're dealing with, so we don't have to make any changes or anything. Sometimes you'll have words in your data or whatever, or dates maybe. You can see all the different types. If you click the cell and then the little button, you can see all the different formats, but we're dealing with numbers here, so let's just keep it at the default. This width and decimal just gives you, it's more like aesthetic. It just gives you an idea of how the variable is going to be represented in the data view. So width of 1 means it's just, one spot after the decimal. It's either a 1 or a 0. If you look up, the Beck Depression Inventory is 2 spaces because those occupy 2 spaces. The sex categorical variable is just 1. With categorical variables like sex, I don't want any decimals, so I just want ones or zeros, not 1.0 and 0.0. If I'm dealing with a continuous variable, I may want to increase that. Here's where I can change the label, and here's where I can provide a little more information on what each variable is. So this is a more complete description. Here's where you can have spaces, and basically this is for your own benefit. This is just a way of telling the researcher what the variable is, because sometimes you'll have a huge data set with tons and tons of variables, and you want to remember what each one is. So I just wrote biological sex of participant. Next column is values. So this is important for my categorical variables, because in my data set I have a bunch of zeros and ones, but those represent either males or females. And so I can see how that's coded if I click the cell and then the little button. And you can see that in this data set, when you see a 0 in the sex column, then that participant is female. 1 is genetic male. We can make edits to this and whatnot. We'll keep it as it is for now, but the values are just arbitrary. They are just numbers that represent the different categories or groups within the variable. So I can't run analysis on the word female and male, but I can run analysis on a bunch of zeros and ones. We'll skip past missing for now, but we'll talk later about what to do if you have missing data. This is just more formatting stuff that we don't really need to worry about. And then the final bit of information is what's called measure. So I mentioned that there are two main types of variables. There's continuous. SPSS calls continuous variables scale, and they denote that with a little ruler. And they denote categorical variables as either ordinal or nominal. Nominal variables mean that the order of the values has no intrinsic meaning. So sex is coded as 0 or 1. That doesn't mean that the group coded as 1 is 1 greater than 0. It's just a random number. So there's no order. Female doesn't necessarily go before male or whatnot. Ordinal means that there is some order implied. And you can see that symbolized by this little like increasing set of bars. So this would be if you had a variable that was coded as like low, medium, high. And in that case, those values do imply some kind of order where you're going from lower to bigger. Nominal is when the groups have, it doesn't matter what order they appear. So this is indeed a nominal variable. And that's basically your data variable view. So now that we have a kind of sense of the basic overview of the setup, let's go back to our data view. And let's start running a few descriptive statistics for demonstration purposes. Remember, we want to describe, summarize this group of people. Ideally, if we're going to publish this or create a report, we want to add that information to a table. So we want to conduct descriptive analysis or univariate analysis on the variables of our choosing. So let's summarize this group. And to do so, I'm going to go up to the Analyze button. And this is where all the statistical tests that we're going to learn in class are going to be found. There are way more here than we will learn. We're going to play around with a few of these frequently. And with repetition, you should start to easily remember which is which. So I want to produce some descriptive statistics. So we talked about some of the types. We talked about frequencies, which are the number and percentage of a value. We talked about the mean, standard deviation, the median, and the IQR, interquartile range. So to begin, I want to find the descriptive statistics tab because I'm doing descriptive statistics. And let's start by getting some information about some of my, let's say, some of those survey variables like quality of life. So you can click on descriptives. This gives you the ability to calculate things like mean and median. So what pops up is on the left a list of all of your variables. You will bring over to the right the variable that you want to analyze. You can do multiple at a time, but for demonstration purposes, I will just do one. So let's say I'm interested in summarizing the depression score, average depression score of this group. So I highlight the Beck depression inventory, I click the arrow, and now this is what I'm going to be analyzing. So now I'm ready to go. I click OK. And now a separate window should pop up, and it says output. So this is where your results will be found. This will be, this is not your data. This is your the result of your analysis. So this is a very simple, first step. It gives me some basic information. The Beck depression inventory, 276 people took this test, and we know that that's the size of our sample. So number is usually denoted as n. Minimum means that someone scored a 0. That was the lowest score in the group. Highest means someone scored a 63. That's the highest in the group. The average or mean is 23.05. And the standard deviation is 15.03. So if I want to report the mean and standard deviation, I'll report 23.05, and then next to it in parentheses, I'll write 15.03. So 23 tells me about the overall average of the group, and we know that some people are going to be really far away from 23. So the mean is not necessarily a great fit for describing every single person, but it describes the entire group. The standard deviation gives you a sense of how much variability or error or variation there is in my data. How far away is most of the group from that 23? If this number is low relative to the size of the mean, then most of the values you can imagine are pretty close to 23. The bigger this number is relative to the mean, the more spread out your population is in terms of their depression inventory values. So 15 is pretty big compared to 23. So I would say that there's a decent amount of kind of variation in this group. So a lot of differences. So these are the two numbers I want, mean and standard deviation. Now let's practice with a categorical variable. So I can find my analyze button from my output screen, or if you go back to your data view, I can do the same. Either way, it takes you to the same thing. So let's look at, let's see, what would be interesting. Let's do reason for surgery. So the reason variable, and I'm down in variable view because I want to find out a little bit of information about this variable. So let's see what the zeros and ones mean. In my data view, I just have zeros and ones. What does that actually mean? So I can click on the values, click the button, and the participants had one of two options to respond to. So when asked what's the reason for getting your cosmetic surgery, they can either answer they're doing it for a change in appearance, or for a physical reason. So this would be like a medical need, like deviated septum, or if the person maybe was in an accident and needed some reconstruction. And then the change of appearance implies kind of more cosmetic. So the zeros mean change in appearance, the ones mean physical reason. So if we're interested in summarizing this group, we wouldn't take the average of this variable. The average of a bunch of ones and zeros, it's going to give me a nonsensical decimal point number. When it's categorical, we want to describe this as the frequency, the number and percentage of each group. So I'm going to go to Analyze. I'm still in descriptive statistics land. I want to get the frequency, the number, and the percentage of this category. So instead of descriptives, I'm going to go up to frequencies. Same thing as before, we have all our variables on the left, and I want to select the reason for surgery. Click the arrow, bring it over. Let's see what some of these buttons tell us. The statistics button, if we wanted to get a little bit more information, we can do that. But let's just keep it simple for now. We'll start kind of dealing with some of these side buttons as we go through the course. So click OK. Okay. So this now adds to our output document. We still have our average result from above. Now we scroll down, and this gives us our frequencies analysis. So this is our output table. You can look at total 276 people. So that's everyone in the sample, meaning that's 100%. And we can now look for differences in the reason for the surgery. So 98 people, that's frequency, the number of people, 98 people in this group are getting the surgery for to change their appearance for a cosmetic reason. That represents 35% of the 276. So 35.5% of this group of people are getting surgery for cosmetic change of appearance reasons. 178 people are doing it for some physical need, and that represents 64.5%. So the information I want to pull out from this is the number, and remember, every stat that we work with needs to have a little accompaniment. So the mean has its standard deviation. Categorical variables will have their number and the percent. So I want to pull out 98, and then in parentheses next to it, I'll write 35.5. Do the same with this one. And when I'm interpreting this, it's best to kind of compare the differences in percentage. So if I want to answer the question, which type of surgery or reason for surgery are participants coming in for? So this group of people, what is the purpose of their surgery? Why are they there? And you can see that a majority, 64.5%, are there for some physical reason. And that's kind of all we can get out of that. So that's going to be it for video 1. This is Introduction to SPSS, just a real kind of dip our toes in the water introduction. Let me just get a sip of my LaCroix to celebrate this achievement. Passion fruit, good stuff. My quality of life just increased by 1 point. Okay, Probably more videos to come. Hope you enjoyed it. Have fun exploring SPSS. Goodbye.